If I could only give you one tip to improve your landings, it would be this. Go watch the birds. Now, hear me out. That might sound weird, but I promise there are so many practical takeaways here. I'm gonna break it down for you really plainly. Birds land like hundreds of times per day, and so they are experts at it. They are better than we'll ever be. So let me walk you through the parallels to aviation. There are many. So first, when birds are landing, generally they have a specific target. They're aiming to land like right on that telephone wire or right on that specific tree branch or right next to the chip that you just dropped on the patio. And in contrast, something I think we're all guilty of as pilots sometimes is just kind of generally aiming for the runway, like especially on long runways. I know sometimes I'm just kind of aiming for a vague spot, like at the beginning of the runway, but then putting it in landing attitude and just kind of waiting for the wheels to softly touch the ground. And that's not necessarily a bad or wrong way to do it, but I think if we want to get really good at landing, we need to have a spot we're targeting. A really good example of this is the power off 180 maneuver. You do it as part of your commercial check ride, and it's basically a target spot landing combined with a simulated engine failure. So for example, you'll just go to power idle when you're abeam the 1,000-foot markers. It's usually a common target, so that way you're not trying to hit like the very beginning of the runway. That way, if you're short, you're not off the runway. But the 1,000-foot markers are usually a good target. So you'll go power idle when you abeam them, and then you can't land any before it, and then you only have up to 200 feet beyond it to touch down. So really you don't have an engine to work with, and you're only targeting a 200-foot landing zone.
Beautiful landing.
So it forces a really good target landing, and you have to get your energy just right, because you can't use your engine if you're short, and then you can't float past the landing zone either. So practicing this maneuver will absolutely make you a better pilot. And I need to go practice this more, honestly, because it really is useful. I feel like there's a lot of maneuvers in your training where you're like, when am I ever gonna use this? Like, why am I learning this maneuver? And I will say, this one is actually really, really helpful and worth practicing even like before your commercial or after your commercial. Like, we should all be doing more of these. Next, when birds have their target spot picked out for landing, it impacts their entire approach because the approach is based on that landing spot. So if we're coming in and just kind of generally aiming for the first third of the runway or first beginning, the beginning portion of the runway, how are we going to adjust our approach accordingly? When we aim for a specific point, on the other hand, we can start asking ourselves high, low, fast, or slow, and what are you going to do about it? Because if the aiming point is vague, it's really hard to answer this question specifically. The best advice I've gotten on controlling your approach is to pitch for airspeed and then use power to control your altitude and descent rate. Now, I've heard people like passionately argue the opposite than that, but this is what's worked for me. It's really nice because you can really just trim the airplane to whatever airspeed you want, and then you're just making small throttle adjustments to really try to nail the spot. For me, it just makes it really easy. Next, when birds are aiming for a spot, they don't come in with too much extra airspeed. If we're honest, we've all been guilty of trying to land like 20 knots too fast and we just float down the runway and are frantically trying to get it on the ground or whatever. We've all been there, and that might work on long runways, but when you're aiming for a spot or landing on a short runway, you really can't get away with carrying way too much airspeed. So take your airspeed seriously and don't get spoiled always landing too fast. Next, birds are putting their feet on the ground where they want. They don't want to float past the chip. They want to land right next to that chip and eat the chip. And this is akin to placing the wheels on the ground instead of just waiting for them to touch the ground. So maybe said a different way, landing is still an intentional flight maneuver. It's putting the wheels on the ground where you want them at the airspeed and attitude and descent rate that you want. And if I'm being honest, a lot of times it's way easier, especially on long runways, to just get the airplane and the landing attitude that you want and then just try to like softly put the wheels down on the ground. And if you end up eating a lot of runway to do it, no big deal. But I find that this kind of puts you in a little bit more of a passive state. You're kind of more of a passenger in this because you're kind of just waiting for it to touch down rather than having a proactive attitude to say, no, I want to touch the wheels down where I want them and, at the firmness that I want them. Like you got to take control. I'm telling this to myself again, to not be a passenger in this process, but to make the airplane do what you want it to do. And so I find when I treat it as a flight maneuver, like putting the wheels on the ground is still a flight maneuver. I'm still flying the airplane to the ground. I'm not just like getting it close to the ground and then giving up on it. It's still an actual flight maneuver. So it's a small distinction, but I don't know, for me, it can be a really powerful one. Real quick, I wanted to let you know that I recently launched my set of private pilot flashcards that I promise can make your studying so much easier. I've taken a bunch of check rides myself, and I really found it was always hard to separate the stuff I knew from the things that needed more work. And so studying and preparing was just always stressful for me. So really just wanted to try to fix that. So I spent 15 months and made these super robust cards that I think can help solve that problem. Now, as of this filming, these launched a few weeks ago and they've already gotten like dozens of 5-star reviews. So I say that with gratitude. Like, I'm really happy that people have really liked them. So I hope you'll take a second to check them out. The link is down in the description, or you can go over to airplaneacademy.com/flashcards to learn more. And more than anything, I just really hope they can help and encourage you in your aviation training. So some of the best landing practice I've ever gotten was when I was flying with TAC Aero, which is an amazing backcountry flight school in Texas. And they were teaching me how to land on a sandbar for the first time in a Top Cub. It was like an awesome, awesome experience. And kind of early in that process, we were practicing some spot landings just on grass. And I got really humbled because I kept floating past the spot. It's really hard to have it right at stall speed in 3-point landing configuration and hit the target spot and not bounce. Like, bringing all of those things together were really hard. Whereas when I was just doing, hey, just go make a soft landing and use as much runway as you need, like, I had no problem doing that. But when you try to combine all of these things and land like a bird, it got a lot harder. But now looking back on this footage, it helped me with landings tremendously because I think it really emphasizes the importance of all the points I just made. Like, aim for a spot, let that inform your approach. Don't be overspeed, and put the wheels on the ground where and when you want them. And birds do this perfectly just about every time. So something I really love doing is if I'm at a red light or a stoplight or at the park with my kids or something, there's always birds flying around. Just pick one out and follow it around with your eyes for a few minutes because it's gonna land 1 or 10 times or something. And just pretend it's its own little 747 and watch how it lands and study it, because there's just so much we can implement about how birds do it. They're so good at it. One other thing I want to mention is that if you like quick hitting tips like this, things that you can put into practice, a while ago I started the Airplane Academy Insiders newsletter where I share actionable tips from things that I've screwed up or things I've learned and done right or things I've done wrong. Like, I just try to be really honest about tips and things that I can share with you that hopefully help you as a pilot. And then I also send out links to my latest content and then any other like interesting resources or things that I've found lately that I thought you'd want to know about. So it's totally free. You can sign up over at airplaneacademy.com/insiders, and I think it will help. And if you'd like some more landing tips, that TAC Aero experience that I talked about earlier, it was amazing. It was like 2 full days of training, but I summarized like all my takeaways in just a few minutes in the video on the screen. It's stuff that's really actionable, things you can put into practice right away, and it was a lot of fun to make. So I hope you'll check that out, the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you over there.